Hello and welcome back. This piece started long before the camera was even turned on. About a year ago, I shaped the first version of this bowl and then I left it. Not because it was finished, but because the wood wasn't ready yet. This is aged birch, a material that slowly changes over time, dries, moves, and reveals its character. And sometimes, what you create in the beginning is not what it wants to become in the end. Today, I'm coming back to it. The surface already tells a story. Natural spalting lines, subtle patterns formed during drying, details that only time can create. From here, I start working on the inside of the bowl. I'm creating a precise recess, a place that will later allow me to securely reverse the piece. This step is all about control. The shape doesn't need to be final yet, but the fit has to be exact. Once that's done, I can flip the bowl, but before moving forward, there's one important step. Because the wood has been drying for over a year, the bowl has slightly deformed. So the first thing I need to do now is to true the surface again, carefully removing material, bringing everything back into alignment. Only once the piece is running through, I can continue shaping the outside. This is where the form really starts to come together. The curve of the bowl, the transition from rim to base, every line needs to feel natural and balanced. At the same time, I'm defining the foot. It's a small detail, but it completely changes how the bowl sits and how it feels as a finished piece. This method of reversing the bowl is extremely effective because it allows me to fully complete the outside, including the base, before moving on to the final stages. There's no need to come back later, no need to remove a tenon or rework the bottom. Everything is clean, intentional, and finished in one continuous process. And that makes a big difference, not just in efficiency, but in the final quality of the piece. At this stage, I begin refining the outer wall of the bowl. I'm using a 16mm bowl gouge, starting with the pull cut. This technique is more controlled, but it leaves a slightly rougher surface, so I follow it with a push cut. And this is where the difference becomes visible. The push cut produces a much cleaner finish, smoother, more refined, almost ready for sanding. These two techniques may look similar, but the result they leave behind is completely different. If you're interested in mastering them, I highly recommend studying the work of Richard Ruffin, Stuart Batty, Mike Mahoney, as well as Ashley Harwood and Tomislav Tomajic. Each of them brings a slightly different approach, but the level of control they achieve is exceptional. To bring everything together, I make a final pass using a pointed scraper, because even with clean cuts, there can still be subtle variations on the surface. The scraper helps blend those transitions, removing any remaining inconsistencies and leaving the outside of the bowl smooth, balanced, and ready for the next step. At this point, I shift my focus to adding a subtle decorative detail. The bowl already has a strong natural character, so I don't want to overdo it. Instead, I am creating two fine lines near the upper part of the outside wall. A small frame that will hold a bit of carving in between, just enough to enhance the piece without taking away from the wood itself. This is always a delicate balance. Too much decoration and you lose the natural beauty. Too little, and the piece can feel unfinished. I'm curious what you think. Would you leave the bowl completely natural, or do you prefer adding small details like this? Let me know in the comments. I always enjoy seeing different opinions, and it often inspires future pieces as well. Now, slowly and carefully, I begin carving between these two lines, and here, direction matters. Because of the changing grain, you have to follow the natural growth of the wood. If you cut against it, the fibers will tear and the surface won't be clean. But when you work with the grain, the cut becomes smooth, controlled, and precise. It's a small detail, but it makes a huge difference in the final result, adding just a touch of texture to give the bowl more depth and a refined character. With the shaping complete, I move on to sanding, starting at 120 grit and gradually working my way up to 320. At this stage, patience is everything. To get a truly smooth surface, I also change the direction of rotation as I sand. This allows me to work the grain from both directions, removing any remaining imperfections and bringing the surface to a much finer finish. It's a small detail, but it makes a noticeable difference in how the bowl feels in the end. If you enjoy pieces like this bowl will be available on our website once it's finished. I'll show you the final result at the end. After sanding, I add one final detail to the base. Our signature coin, a small mark, but an important one. It connects the piece to our workshop and to the story behind it. With that detail in place, everything is ready for the final transformation. The finish is what will bring this piece fully to life. For the finish, I'm using our own blend. A carefully developed combination of TUNG oil and CARNAUBA wax designed to protect the wood while enhancing its natural beauty. The TUNG oil penetrates deep into the fibers, bringing out the richness and depth of the grain, while the CARNAUBA wax adds a smooth, durable surface with a subtle, natural sheen. Not too glossy, not artificial, just the way wood should feel in your hands. As soon as it touches the surface, everything changes. The colors become warmer, the patterns more defined, and the entire piece comes to life. This is always the most satisfying moment, because this is where the transformation is complete. If you'd like to use the same finish in your own projects, it's available on our website. With the outside complete, I now turn my attention to the inside of the bowl. I begin shaping with a 16mm bowl gouge, ground to a 40/40 profile, which allows for clean and controlled cuts, especially as I move deeper into the form. As the shape starts to develop, I switch to a smaller 12mm bowl gouge. With a slightly different grind, it gives me better control, particularly when refining the bottom of the bowl. This is where precision really matters. The transition into the base needs to feel smooth and natural, without any sharp changes or interruptions in the curve. At the same time, I'm constantly checking the wall thickness, not just for accuracy, but to keep it consistent along the entire profile. Because even if you don't immediately see it, you can always feel it in the final piece. Once the form feels right, I move on to refining the surface. A light pass with the round nose scraper helps blend the curves and remove any remaining tool marks. But in this case, the result still isn't quite where I want it to be. Birch is a relatively soft wood and it can be challenging to get a perfectly clean finish. So instead of forcing it, I take a step back. I resharpen the 12mm ball gouge and come back for one final clean pass. And that makes all the difference. The surface now feels smooth, controlled, and exactly as it should be. As I make this final pass, I like to slow things down a bit. This is where everything comes together. And while you're watching this, I'm curious about your process. Do you go straight to sanding after shaping, or do you spend more time refining your cuts to get the cleanest possible surface first? Let me know in the comments. It's always interesting to see different approaches, and there's always something new to learn from each other. For me, getting the cleanest cut possible at this stage makes all the difference later on. As I complete this final pass, the ball is finally taking its true shape. What started as an unfinished piece, left aside for over a year, has now come full circle. From here, the process becomes quieter, more focused, sanding, just like on the outside, gradually refining the surface, removing the last small imperfections, taking the time to make sure everything feels smooth, balanced, and consistent. And then the final step, the finish, the moment where the wood reveals its full character, where the grain deepens and every detail becomes more alive. It's always a transformation worth waiting for. If you've enjoyed this process, this exact bowl is already available on our website. You can find the link right here above and also in the description below. And if you appreciate handmade work like this, pieces that take time, patience, and attention to detail, you're always welcome to take a closer look. Thank you for being here and for spending your time with me. It truly means a lot. If you'd like to see more projects like this, feel free to subscribe and follow along. And if you want to support what I do, liking and sharing this video helps more than you might think and allows me to keep creating pieces like this. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.